Chapter 33. Matt sat in Oberst's cubicle. Oberst had Jen's case file open in front of her, leafing through the pages. Jen's officially a fugitive now, Oberst said, and she's doing a damn good job staying hidden. Not a sign of her? None. She's not using her credit cards. We've been monitoring them, and she's staying off her phone. What about her vehicle? The Mustang? No hits on the license plate. We've got a BOLO out statewide. We've talked to her parents and friends, but they all deny knowledge of her whereabouts. They could be lying, Matt suggested, rubbing his wrists. What's wrong with your wrists? Oberst asked. Wonder Woman's magic lasso. What? Never mind. Are we watching the family and friends? I've requested wiretaps on her parents' phones and her closest friends. I also talked to your sister yesterday, Oberst added. Kat's chomping at the bit to help with this case. Matt nodded. That sounds like Kat. Having Kat waiting in the wings isn't a bad thing. Your sister and I agree on one thing. Jen is going to try again. You need to watch yourself at all times. I hate that this is happening, he said. I know you do. Matt took an instant dislike of Albert Abernathy. He was the type of neighbor you bought a house next to and then discovered he was a living nightmare. It wasn't the security cameras that littered the outside of his house. Matt had them too, though not in the same abundance. It was the man's attitude. He monitored his neighbors' comings and goings. He even watched the alley for trash can violations, making sure no one dumped anything in his bins. Once, Abernathy saw a couple walking their dog early in the morning. The dog did its business, and the couple cleaned it up. But they made the mistake of tossing the bag into Abernathy's trash can. At 6 a.m., he retrieved the poop, hopped in his car, and chased them down to return the bag. He had a way of speaking that grated on your nerves. Nevertheless, he might have a lead in the Ed Black matter. I've been on vacation, Abernathy explained. Naturally, when I returned, I watched my security video. Naturally, Matt said. Abernathy missed the sarcasm. Matt stood with Joe in Abernathy's study, which looked like a guard tower at a jail with all its security monitors. Abernathy sat in front of a keyboard facing a large monitor. I heard about those terrible murders. I think I might have something, Abernathy said, pointing at the monitor. Let's see it, Matt said. Abernathy lived behind McKnight's property, the back of his house facing the back of McKnight's. Abernathy pushed a series of keys on his keyboard. The monitor displayed the street that ran between Abernathy's house and McKnight's. The street was empty. I'm going to advance the video, Abernathy said. The video skipped ahead. The time on the monitor read 3 a.m. For a minute, nothing happened, and then a vehicle drove onto the screen. The vehicle stopped on the roadway directly behind McKnight's house. Stop it, Joe said, indicating the monitor. Abernathy pushed a key on the keyboard. The screen froze. Can you tell what kind of car we're looking at? Joe asked. Matt studied the screen closely. The image was too dark and too blurred. I can't even make out the color of the vehicle, Matt said. Can you zoom in on the car's license plate? Matt asked, leaning closer to the monitor. Abernathy clicked a few keys, enlarging the image of the vehicle's rear. I can try, but this system has limitations. The image pixelated as he zoomed, the license plate becoming a blurry rectangle of indistinguishable characters. Nothing, Joe said. What about when they first arrived? Maybe the angle was better. Abernathy scrolled back to when the vehicle first appeared. The camera caught it from the side here. He enlarged that portion of the frame, but the result was the same, a smudged, unreadable plate. What about the driver, Matt asked. Can we see anything useful there? Abernathy clicked through several frames, stopping at one where the driver's door was open. This is probably our best shot, he said, zooming in again. The image revealed only a dark silhouette, a vague human shape without discernible features. Nothing, Joe sighed. It looks like they're wearing some kind of hat or hood, Abernathy said with the enthusiasm of an amateur detective. See this shape here? He traced his finger along the outline of what might have been a baseball cap or hooded sweatshirt. Matt squinted. Maybe. Hard to tell if that's headwear or just an artifact from the low resolution. I can run it through my enhancement software, Abernathy offered eagerly. I purchased it last year after someone kept stealing my newspaper. Never caught them, but the software claims it can recover details invisible to the naked eye. Best to let our lab handle any enhancements, Matt said diplomatically. Go on, Joe said to Abernathy. Abernathy continued the video. The passenger door of the vehicle opened and a person exited, a large male, Matt guessed. The individual went to the trunk of the vehicle and it opened. He retrieved something unidentifiable and hopped the fence onto McKnight's property. A shovel, Abernathy said. He's digging. Appears to be, Matt agreed. It was dark and the image extremely difficult to see. 20 minutes later, whoever it was returned to the vehicle. He withdrew something large from the trunk. That's it. That's Ed Black, Joe said, excited. It was impossible to tell, but the figure half carried and half dragged something large to the fence. He muscled it over the fence and dragged it to the spot where he'd been digging. 5 minutes later, he finished. He climbed back over the fence, threw whatever it was, a shovel probably, back into the trunk and closed the trunk. He then climbed into the passenger's side, and the vehicle drove off. That's it, Matt said. We can't tell anything from the video, Joe said. We know several things now, Matt said. We know there are two of them, the driver and the person in the passenger seat. We know what time they dumped the body. We know they are driving a sedan of some kind, and we know they intentionally chose McKnight's property. They drove right to it. Matt looked at Abernathy. Have you altered this video in any way? Abernathy shook his head vigorously. I haven't touched it. I figured you guys might want to try to clean it up. Have you checked the other videos that show this spot? Joe asked. I have. There's nothing interesting. What are you thinking? Matt asked Joe. They had to scout the location, didn't they? Joe said. Abernathy looked apologetic. The system records over itself every 7 days. I'm sorry. Matt turned to Abernathy. Have you shown this to anyone else? Abernathy shook his head. Just you two. Joe nodded. We'll need to secure this as evidence. I'm going to call our forensics team. In the meantime, please don't access these files or make any changes to your system. Matt took out his card and handed it to Abernathy. Thank you for coming forward with this. It's extremely helpful. Matt stood with Joe in the driveway outside Abernathy's house. Think the state techs will be able to do anything with that video? Joe asked. I've been thinking about that. Might be time to call Cat. Joe raised an eyebrow. The Bureau? Yeah. Say what you want about them, but they've got tools we don't. That video's grainy as hell, but it's the first real lead we've had. FBI's digital lab might be able to pull a plate number, enhance a face, something. Joe nodded slowly. You make the call? Yeah, I'll loop her in. Bree wants to meet Penny. I'm supposed to invite you to dinner, Joe said. Have you been gossiping? Matt asked. Of course, Joe grinned. Let's try that new Mexican place over on K Avenue. I've heard good things. I'll talk to Bree. The rest of Matt's day was consumed by the investigation into Becky Johnson's murder. He built a profile. Good student, no disciplinary history, well-liked by peers and teachers. Her social media and phone records revealed nothing suspicious. No signs of threats, stalking, or secret relationships. He interviewed friends who were devastated but consistent. No one had been bothering Becky, and everyone seemed to love her. Her ex-boyfriend was ruled out, and no rivalries or jealousies emerged among her circle. The autopsy confirmed a gunshot wound to the head, signs of sexual assault and restraint. DNA was recovered, but there were no matches in CODIS. Joe worked the sex offender registry, interviewing locals. 27 registered offenders lived nearby, but none stood out. Matt also explored the possibility of a stalker, investigating neighbors, workers, and anyone with access to the area. Still, no leads surfaced. By nightfall, Matt sat in his truck, frustrated. No motive, no suspect, just a girl with no enemies, and a killer who'd left almost nothing behind. Matt, Penny, and Joe stood just outside the front doors of Mr. Tex-Mex, gathered with a loose cluster of other couples waiting for a table. The waiting area was a patch of concrete between the entrance and the parking lot. Bree just texted. She found parking down the street, Joe said. She'll be here any minute. Matt nodded, glancing at Penny. She seemed relaxed despite the double date pressure. Matt had suggested the restaurant, so he kept his impatience about the wait to himself. There she is, Joe said, waving toward a slender woman approaching from the edge of the parking lot. Bree Foster wasn't your typical detective's wife. A PhD chemist, she led a research team at NovaCare and held multiple patents. Despite out-earning Joe by a wide margin, they lived simply. Modest house, public schools, old cars. Joe called it the formula. Live below your means, retire early, and buy freedom, not stuff. Sorry I'm late, Bree said, kissing Joe before turning to Matt with a warm smile. Matt, good to see you. You too, Bree, Matt said, stepping aside to make introductions. This is Penny. Breeze took in Penny with open curiosity. So you're the mystery woman, Bree said. I was beginning to think Matt was keeping you locked in a tower somewhere. Penny laughed. No chains or dungeons, I promise. It's great to finally meet you. Matt speaks highly of you both. I wish I could say the same, but this one, Bree nudged Matt playfully, suddenly forgot how to form complete sentences when asked about his personal life. Matt shrugged, not bothering to deny it. Some things you don't jinx by talking about. I hear the two of you finally got a break on the murders? Bree asked, looking between Matt and Joe. Joe nodded. Someone's home security system caught footage of what might be our killer planting Black's body. I'm starving, Penny said beside him. The sense of sizzling fajitas and warm tortillas wafted from the restaurant's entrance each time the door swung open. You're always starving, Matt said. I have to warn you, I'm a big eater, Penny said to Joe and Bree. A woman's scream interrupted the conversation. Matt turned toward the parking lot, his body responding before his mind fully registered the threat. Time seemed to stretch and slow. Jen stood on the sidewalk 10 yards away, her blonde hair whipping across her face in the evening breeze. Her features were contorted in rage. Both hands gripped an automatic pistol, his trained eye registering it as a Glock 19, pointed directly at his chest. Die, you bastard! The words tore from Jen's throat. Matt's hand moved instinctively toward his shoulder holster. The distance between his hand and weapon stretched impossibly. He saw Jen's index finger tighten on the trigger. He knew with cold certainty he couldn't clear leather in time. A sudden hit, hard as a linebacker's tackle, slammed into Matt's left side. Joe moved fast, shoving him clear with both hands. Matt's legs tangled as he went down, already off balance and past the point of recovery. The Glock's report cracked through the air. Motherfucker, Joe grunted. I'm hit. Matt caught a glimpse of Joe's face before his own body struck the concrete. Pain lanced through his right arm and shoulder as he took the brunt of the fall. He rolled away from the impact point, creating a moving target. Around them, the waiting area erupted into chaos. People dove for whatever cover they could find. The Glock continued to fire. Matt could hear Jen screaming between shots, her words lost in the pandemonium, but the hatred in her voice unmistakable. Bits of pulverized concrete sprayed Matt's face as a round struck inches from where his head had been half a second earlier. The sharp fragments stung his cheek and eye, but he registered the pain as if from a distance, his focus narrowing to survival. He continued rolling, coming up against the base of a concrete planter. His revolver was in his hand now, though he had no conscious memory of drawing it. He came up into a shooting stance, weapon extended, scanning for his target, but Jen was gone. Joe, Bree yelled. Someone call an ambulance! Matt sprang to his feet, ignoring the hot throb of pain in his shoulder where he'd struck the concrete. Joe lay crumpled on the ground 6 feet away, one hand pressed to his upper chest near his left shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers, an expanding dark stain. Bree knelt beside him. Dial 911, Matt shouted, though he could already hear someone nearby giving their location to a dispatcher. The restaurant manager hovered nearby, repeatedly asking if anyone was a doctor. Matt raced to Joe's side, dropping to one knee. The blood looked black in the dim outdoor lighting, pulsing steadily from what appeared to be a through-and-through wound high in the meaty part of Joe's shoulder. Apply direct pressure, he instructed Bree, who was already pressing her palms against the wound to stem the bleeding. I've got him, she said. Go. Joe's face was ashen, his breathing rapid and shallow, but his eyes were clear and focused. He gestured weakly toward the parking lot with his good arm. Go, he echoed. Get her. Matt hesitated, torn between staying with his wounded friend and pursuing the active threat. Before he could decide, Penny appeared at his side, her hands already red with Joe's blood, where she'd been helping Bree. "I'm here with them," she said. "Do what you need to do." That was all Matt needed. He squeezed Joe's ankle once, nodded to Penny, and sprinted toward the edge of the waiting area, his weapon held at low ready position. At the boundary between the waiting area and parking lot, he forced himself to stop rather than charging blindly into the open. He pressed his back against a concrete column, took a steadying breath, and then carefully peered out. A heavy-set man in his 40s, cargo shorts stretching across his substantial belly, a University of Texas t-shirt damp with sweat, caught Matt's eye and pointed urgently to the right side of the building. "She went that way," he mouthed exaggeratedly, gesturing again with more emphasis. Matt nodded his thanks and moved toward the corner of the building. The restaurant occupied the end unit of a small strip mall, with a narrow alleyway separating it from the neighboring dental office. The lights along this side of the building had burned out, leaving deep shadows. When he reached the corner, he leaned out to check the alley. The reaction was instantaneous. A muzzle flash illuminated the darkness, followed by the deafening report of Jen's Glock. Matt threw himself backward just as bullets tore into the stucco corner where his head had been a fraction of a second earlier. The shots came so rapidly, they sounded like one continuous explosion, bits of building material showering down onto his shoulders and hair. "Jesus," he hissed, pressing himself flat against the wall. The sustained fire suggested a high-capacity magazine. Jen had come prepared, likely with multiple clips. When the firing stopped, Matt heard the distinctive sound of a magazine being ejected, followed by the metallic click of a fresh one being slammed home. He seized the moment, dropping to a crouch and pivoting around the corner in a textbook tactical move, leading with his weapon. The alley was empty. Footsteps pounded on asphalt, retreating rapidly. Matt pushed forward in pursuit, weapon extended, using dumpsters and recycling bins as cover. At the far end of the alley, he caught a glimpse of movement just as Jen's distinctive red Mustang roared to life. The tires squealed as she accelerated out of the parking space. Matt raised his weapon but held his fire. Too many civilians, too much chance of a ricochet hitting an innocent bystander. The Mustang's taillights blurred as it sped across the lot and onto 14th Street, turning left and disappearing into traffic. "God damn it," Matt muttered, lowering his revolver. As the immediate danger passed, other sensations began to register. Something warm and wet trickled down his face. He reached up and touched his cheek, his fingers coming away smeared with blood. Fragments of concrete had peppered the side of his face when the bullet struck the building. Now that he noticed it, the cuts began to sting sharply, like dozens of paper cuts igniting simultaneously. Matt holstered his weapon. The heavy-set man from earlier approached cautiously, hands held slightly away from his sides in a non-threatening posture. "I'm an ER nurse at Presbyterian," he said, his eyes professionally assessing Matt's facial injuries. "Let me take a look at you." "I'm fine," Matt said automatically, though the side of his face was now burning in earnest. He pointed back toward the waiting area, where a small crowd had gathered around Joe. "A man's been shot back there. He needs help more than I do." The nurse nodded without argument, immediately changing course. Matt followed, scanning the surroundings one final time before re-entering the waiting area. By now, the wail of approaching sirens had grown deafening. As Matt pushed through the crowd, he could see Joe still on the ground, now surrounded by 3 people attempting to help, Bree maintaining pressure on the wound, Penny holding his hand and speaking soothingly, and the restaurant manager offering what appeared to be a first aid kit. The nurse brushed past Matt. "I'm Scott, ER nurse at Presbyterian. Let me take a look at that wound." Bree rode with Joe in the ambulance to Presbyterian Hospital, climbing into the back despite the paramedics' initial protests. "I'm his wife," she'd said in a tone that brooked no argument. The paramedic had wisely stepped aside. Matt had handed Bree's car keys to Penny before the ambulance doors closed. "You should go with them," he'd said. Penny had nodded, squeezing his arm. "Call me when you're done here." Now Matt sat on the bumper of a patrol car, wincing occasionally as a crime scene technician dabbed antiseptic on the concrete fragments embedded in his cheek. Around him, the parking lot had transformed into a sea of flashing lights and uniformed officers. Traffic on 14th Street was being diverted, curious onlookers held back by yellow tape. 40 minutes after the shooting, his phone rang. Penny's name flashed on the screen. "How's Joe?" he asked. "In surgery," Penny replied. "He'll be fine according to the doctor, but the bullet nicked the bone and he's going to be in a lot of pain for a while." "That's good news," Matt said, relief washing through him. He closed his eyes briefly. The image of Joe taking the bullet meant for him playing again behind his eyelids. "Penny, I'm sorry." "Don't apologize, Matt," she cut him off. "I must admit, however, it is a bit weird that my boyfriend is getting shot at all the time." There was a brief pause. "You promised to come and let the doctors look at your face," Penny reminded him. Matt touched his cheek gingerly. The technician had removed the larger fragments and cleaned the wounds, but his face felt like it had been scrubbed with sandpaper. "I'm finishing up here," he said, watching as officers continued to place evidence markers where bullet casings had been found. He hesitated, then said, "Penny, why me?" The question had been lurking in the back of his mind since she'd first begun staying over. Penny's laugh was warm against his ear. "Well, I was going to say because you make me feel safe, but that sounds stupid now, doesn't it?" Matt found himself smiling despite everything. "Just a little." A comfortable silence stretched between them before she added, "I almost forgot. Bring food. Bree and I are starving." "Mexican's probably off the menu for a while," he said dryly. "There's a decent pizza place across from the hospital," Penny suggested. "And Matt?" "Yeah. Hurry up, I need to see you in one piece."